distinction, black and white.
We had clothes, we had food, my mother had a hustle, and then all of a sudden, I'm realizing now that all these people I saw in our neighborhood and in other neighborhoods, everybody had a hustle, some kind or another. Some were good hustles, some were illegal hustles, some were bad hustles. Now, why do I say that? The numbers, even though it was illegal, was not a bad hustle. Selling dope was. But then you could buy illegal liquor after hours. There was always somebody that had a after hour where you could buy a pint of liquor or a pint of wine. Everybody, every block, there was always some guy or gal selling that. The reason why I know that is because when I finally became a teenager, we had a partner that did that. Skippy. That's what we called him, Skippy. I won't mention the rest of his name, but his name was Skippy. Now, Skippy only sold gin. He didn't sell nothing else but gin, because that's what he liked to drink. So if you wanted something to drink, go to Skippy, get you some gin. But he didn't sell nothing else but gin. So, in watching that, Skippy started telling us, now he was a teenager. He said he would give credit to his clientele because he knew they were coming back. Skippy could sell his gin during the hours that the liquor stores were open. Because if you had 50 cents, but you needed $1, he'd get credit for that because he know you're coming back. Now the liquor store was right there, but you got to get the liquor store that $1. He had a business that was thriving in those days. So I call it bootleg. It wasn't well, yeah, I guess you could call it bootleg. Bootleg and whiskey. So all these hustles went on in Harlem. You had the drug boys, you knew who they were, but they sold their drugs out in the street. There's always something going on. And when you think about New York, you think about all these people who grew up in New York at this time and the things that were going on. Now, this was before the Civil Rights Movement. I'm going to call this the Harlem Movement, but that's why I call it when the magic was real, because you would see people walking down the street looking like that brother up there. You would see ladies with dresses on, white gloves, a hat, very elegant looking. I saw that all my life, and that's why I got in the clothing industry, because I wanted to be like the well-dressed people. So as I moved along in life, as I moved in and out, bobbed in and out of Harlem, time for me to go to high school. And like I said, I went to the High School of Fashion Industry, which teaches then the entire apparel trade. And that school still exists. The only difference is they don't teach all that they taught me. Now they teach just the fashion part of it. Fashion illustration, fashion this. But the one thing that they do teach in high school is how to sew. And sew at a level, because the school was designed to feed the garment industry the best of the best. And I can honestly say this today. Take a kid out of High School of Fashion Industry, they will outsew any of these little fashion schools that are out there in this high school level. So I'm dressed to the nine, as they say, every day, because I'm clean. Oh, I'm clean. When we got to high school, outside of all the parties and hanging out we did, we went to the beach on the weekend. My whole entire high school life, Sundays we spent at the beach. Now let me tell you about the beach. There were beaches all over, especially because New York is on a water wave. So you got water all around us. But we went to this beach in Brooklyn, Reese Beach, Jacob Riis Park, the beach. And we hung out on Bay 5. Why Bay 5? Because the bus dropped you off at Bay 5. So we didn't bogart at Bay 5. Bay 5 was the black area of the beach. Now you had all other bays. You had 4, 3, 2, 1, and you had 6, 7, and 8 going this way. But Bay 5, we owned that because that's where the bus stopped. So you had to walk the other way, or we had guerrillaed that. Have you ever been to a beach? Now, I know a lot of people have been to the beach, but growing up in New York at Jacob Riis Park, Reese Beach is what we called it, just Reese Beach. Well, you ever been to a beach where from the boardwalk to the water, you couldn't see sand? You couldn't see sand because there was a blanket on every inch of Bay 5. You had to walk on somebody's blanket to get to wherever you were going. That's how many black brothers and sisters were on that beach. Every Sunday, like clockwork. And we weren't the only one. Everybody went to the beach on Sunday. Now, we lived in Harlem. It took us 2 hours to get to the beach. We had to take 2 subways and a bus. The bus took us to the beach. And like I say, Bay 5 is where the bus stop was. The whole beach was covered with blankets. You couldn't see sand. I'm telling you. But you had water, and you had a boardwalk. Now, let me tell you how exciting that was. From all boroughs, they went to that beach. Now, you had Coney Island, you had Rye Beach, you had all of these other beaches that surrounded. But for some odd reason, beaches came into existence for us, and that was the beach we went to. Now, the ladies, or the young girls, always had the food. So you had to find you some gals, get you some food. Me and my partners bought some wine all the time. We get a half a gallon of wine and a blanket. We roll the blanket up, tie a string around it, throw it over our shoulder. We get a half a gallon jug, had the handle on it. We put a rope around it, tie it over our shoulders, head to the beach. So we give them a little wine, give a little grub. Then in high school, New York, we started high school fraternities. We had Greek fraternities just like colleges did. That idea came to us because when we grew up in Harlem, City College was up the street from us. And the Greek used to, in those days, because City College was on Convent Avenue, their cues mainly would run the pledges down our block. So we used to see the cues, and they had a little song, and the song was Q Sci-Fi, better than an MF. And they'd come down, and they'd be talking about Q Sci-Fi, better than an MF, but they use the other words. I'm just using the initials. So we watched these growing up as kids. So we got to high school. We didn't start it, but when we got to high school, a group in Brooklyn started this Greek fraternity thing. My group was the Delta Phi Betas with green and white. Started with crew cap, had our letters on it, D5B. Then somebody had come out, so we went from the crew cap to they had a little windbreaker. So we got us a windbreaker. So now we got crew cap and windbreaker. So we went, my group, the Delta Phi Beta, we called the Beta Boys. We went one step further. When we went to the beach in the summer, we created us a flag. So we had a flag that had Delta Phi Beta on it. Then everybody started having flags. Well, The next thing we did is when we didn't go to the beach on Sunday, there was always a party on Friday. Well, there was a clothing store in New York back then called Empire Clothing, downtown. You could get a suit, 2 pair of pants for $29. So we went out and we bought suits for all the boys in the club. Then I got a patch made up and I sewed them on because I'm in sewing school now. So I sewed them on the Chris. So now when we go to a party, everybody had their little bitch match stuff on. We clean now. We all got suits on with a crest that said Delta Phi Beta on it there. They couldn't touch me and my partners growing up. But a funny thing happened one summer. Going to the beach, one of my friends worked at a auto supply store. Then in those days it was called Strauss store. And outside of auto supply stores, they sold bicycles, they sold other little sporting good things and whatnot. They had these walkie-talkies. And he stole 3 sets of them. We'll call it like it is. He stole 3 sets of walkie-talkies. Now we go out to the beach. So we had 3, so we had six walkie-talkies. So now we go out to the beach and we got a walkie-talkie. We got our colors on. We got a walkie-talkie. So we walking around there. The crowd didn't know. We police, but we teenagers. Or what was going on? So if I saw a blanket and it had 4 girls on it, and they had a couple of big lunch boxes, lunch baskets on it, pull out my walkie-talkie, holler. We all had numbers too. Number 2, got 3 vacancies over here. Who's calling in? My partners, if they weren't doing anything, because we scattered once we get on the beach. If they weren't doing anything, say, number 4, number 2, number 1, we'll be there. Take my cap off, wave it. They knew where I was. That went on all summer long. We were always one step in front. Then as we partied during the winter months, like I said, it was always a party. Now we got our club, Delta Phi Betas. We were Harlem hood rats. I'll call it to you like that. We were Harlem hood rats. And there was a party one time we went to, and we ran into a bunch of girls, because they had little girls' social clubs too, and they were called the Capricorns. They were the rich girls, or their parents were. You know, they weren't rich, their parents were. So they always had money, and we lit in and we connected with them. They were society debutante black young ladies. We were hood rats, but we were so clean that they just fell in love with us because we always had suits on, we was always clean, and we were well-mannered. Now, we came from good, respectable families, but we had no money. So we would always have a party, and there was a couple of frat houses back then. One, the Kappa Zone, and it was called Kappa Castle, and they would rent that venue out, and you'd have a party. Well, we get the Capricorns to put up the money to rent the place. We get the Capricorns to buy all the little hors d'oeuvres, as we used to call them, and we would charge admission. Well, the Capricorn girls didn't want the money, so we got the money for admission. We hung with the Capricorns all through high school. Then they had never been to Reed's Beach. Then they started coming out to the beach with us. So these little rich black sisters were exposed to, I won't say the thug life, but the real down-to-earth black folk living. They were out of that circle. We didn't know that at first until they would always ask this question. And it was always like, well, you black, you ought to know that. No, they didn't know that. They didn't know that. So in doing that and going back and forth, this is what we did. Me, I'm always dressed up because I go to the high school of fashion industry. So I'm the cleanest one out. I got 4 pair of pants, 3 pair of shoes, where some of the other brothers only had 2 pair of pants and 1 pair of shoes. But because I go to a fashion school and I could make my clothes, I didn't have to buy, so I would buy shoes and things of that nature. Whereas they had to buy shoes, belts, and everything, and the clothes. So I was one step in front of them. So I said, wow, this is nice. But in my journey around New York and through the places, I ran track. And in running track, I was a good track runner, but not a great track runner, because I didn't put the energy into getting great. I was just good. I was always, and I don't, you know how people lie, oh yeah man, I won this. I didn't. Never won a race in my life. But I competed. I competed in everything. I didn't care whether I won or not. I just wanted to be in the game. I wanted to be in the race. So I was always a 4th place finisher, 3rd place finisher, 5th place finisher, out of maybe 10. I was in the mix. I couldn't beat them bad boys, them fast boys. Now I want to tell you guys the difference between running track then and running track now. The difference that we ran dashes opposed to meters. So I ran 100-yard dash. I was a below 100 runner. I could run 9.8, 9.9 any day of the week. Never won a race with those times. Never won a race. Because the guys who were winning those races were running 9.4, 9.5. If a guy won a race in those days in a 9.6, he didn't even want the medal. Me, I'd have loved to have that medal, okay? But they practiced 24/7. They became, then I ran up against them as I got older. But during my high school days, and I was on a track team, we didn't have no serious runnings. We was a fashion school. They used to call us the sissy school, to be very, very honest with you, because we had 2,400 students. We only had 400 boys, male students, and half of them were gay. So they used to call us the sissy school. But the brothers that, when we were in the tailoring part, oh, we cleaned, but nobody in New York cleaning in the fashion brothers there. I played basketball growing up in New York. And I played basketball. Here's a story that I tell. I don't mind telling it. Played high school basketball. We didn't have a great team. We had good players that went to the school, but they didn't play basketball. But we had a basketball team. I was on the track team, and I was on the basketball team. I tell this story because this is a real story. There was a legend when I was growing up in Harlem. The brother's name was Pee Wee Kirkland. Pee Wee Kirkland is a legend in Harlem basketball. I didn't make the basketball team until my senior year, but I practiced with them all along because in those days, you couldn't really play till you were a junior or senior. You could make the team, but they don't let you play. You know, wait your turn. Nowadays, you can play as a freshman. But in those days, you had to wait your turn. Now, Pee Wee Kirkland went to a school that was 5 blocks away from where my school was. My school was on 24th Street. His school was on 18th and 19th Street, just 5 blocks away. Now, I finally make the team in my senior year. The 10th grade, here comes this cat named Pee Wee Kirkland. I don't know who a Pee Wee Kirkland is. I could care less about him. I was a good ball player. I was the defensive guy on the ball team. So, we don't have that good a team. His school did. His school was where all the bad boys went to school. In other words, they kick you out of this school, they sent you to that school. They used to call them 600 schools. Why they called them 600, we never knew. But it was like the school where the troubled boys went, in so many words. Now, the first time I finally get a chance to play, we have a scrimmage against his school, Charles Everett Hughes. I went to Fashion, he went to Hughes. The very first time I had to guard their best player. I always guarded their best player. They say, you gotta guard Kirkland. I still don't know who he is. I kid you not. Because every area, they got the bad cats that you don't know. But they know them in that area. And because there's so many pockets of areas, everybody got a bad cat. Cat that he was the baller or the bad guy. But you don't know everybody. So I don't know who Pee Wee Kirkland is. Well, let me tell you something about who Pee Wee Kirkland is. In a scrimmage game, now you know scrimmage is practice. I guard Pee Wee Kirkland. I held them to 19 points. Now let me tell you something. In high school, to be able to score 19 points, period, you got to be good because cats be scoring 2 points, 4 points, 6 points. If you got into double digits and scored 10, oh, you were a baller. And don't get into 20 points, you're a superstar. I hold Pee Wee Kirkland to 19 points. 19 points in a scrimmage game. After that, we are leaving the school. We didn't, back then you don't shower when you leave. You shower after the games, but scrimmage, and because we were only 4 blocks away, we just put on our little sweatsuits and we walked back to the school. Well, we left the school through the back entrance because the gym was on the back part of the school. And it had those push-out doors, but you can't come in. I push out the door, and there was Pee Wee Kirkland standing right there in front of me with 40 guys. I mean 40 guys. And I'm with these guys on the team. They ain't from my hood, because my school you could come from anywhere. So I had guys that lived in Queens, some lived in Brooklyn, some lived in Staten Island, some lived in Manhattan, but they weren't from my neighborhood. I don't know these guys if they down. Now it's 12 of us, but 40 of these guys standing in front of us. I said, wow. And they standing there. Pee Wee was standing in front of me with his arm folded like that. Now Pee Wee, we were about the same weight, but he was about 2 inches taller than me. So he walked up to me, and he thumped me in my chest. He said, "You embarrassed me." I said, "How embarrassed you? We got a scrimmage game." I held them to 19 points. I don't think that's an embarrassment. Didn't know that the boy was averaging 30 points normally. Or whatever he was averaging, nobody else was averaging that. I'm saying, wow. We gonna kick your butt. He got 40 guys. I'm here with 11 other guys. I don't know where their hearts are. This is how I approached it. Because I told you, I grew up fighting. Everywhere I went, I had to learn how to fight. So I grew up fighting. I said to myself, so we had a motto growing up in Harlem, where I live. You don't run. You fight, take your licks. If you're gonna get your licks, take your licks. But you don't run. My teammates were ready to run. But how you gonna run? These cats in front of you. That's the only way out. So I told Pee Wee, I looked at the brother and I just called him out. I said, look, give me a fair one, but let my team go. I knew if he let me go, I was gonna get my butt whipped. Oh, I was gonna get my butt. He got 40 guys. I said, let my team go, but give me a fair one. Well, what his boys say, this little he got balls. Pee Wee Kirkland looked me in the eye and said, I kind of like you, man. He said, because you stood up to me. I'm going to stand up to you. I don't care how many you are. That's just where I grew up. He said, we're going to let you go. It was like Moses parting the Red Sea. Then 40 cats made a pathway for me and my team to get out of that situation. We went through the situation, walking slow. I'm looking at these cats, all these cats around me, these high schoolers. I'm looking at them and say, yeah, man, yeah, I'm bad. Boy, the minute we turned the corner, we were in full flight, running out of school. I didn't see Pee Wee again. I didn't see Pee Wee at all again. So we had to play them in a regular game. Pee Wee scored 42 points on me. Coach hollering at me, Mike Ballard, what's wrong with you? You know you can guard him better. I said to this coach, I said, Coach, you don't live where I live. He could have scored 100. I would not have cared. Could I have checked him? Yes. I care. Because I know they had a reputation, them and Boys High had a reputation back then that we're going to beat you on the court and kick your butt after the game anyway. They just had that reputation. Boys High had the same thing. Now, why do I mention Boys High? Those days in New York City, public school system, Boys High was the king of the hill. They beat you in basketball, they beat you in track, and they had a swimming team because they had a pool. They were that good. I played against some of the greatest schoolboys in my day. Didn't beat none of them. I can tell you I beat them, but I played against them. There was a guy who came along named Connie Hawkins. They called him the Hawk. Played ball in high school. Played against him. Madison Square Garden. They beat our butt. They beat us something like 60-something to 11. But they were the champions. They would win the title every year. In those days, they didn't have divisions like they have now. 1A, 2A, 3A, 4A, quad A, whatever. So everybody played against everybody. They didn't divide it. The weaker schools play all the weaker schools, and so on and so on. So everybody played that. Well, we were the weakest school out. But we had to go up against the bad boys. I didn't care. I just wanted to play. Boy, they beat the tar out of us. But it was okay. So you go into school in New York in those days, and everybody, like I say, hung out in the streets. That's why I call it streets. Everybody was in the street. All you ever did was play in the streets. That's all you ever did was play in the streets. So, at that point in my life, now I'm seeing everything, I'm doing everything. I'm in high school. I have learned the sewing trade. And I said to myself, time to get a job. At that point, I'm in the job market. Now, the good thing about that school that I went to, the job market was right there for me. Because in our school, we had a division of New York labor in the school where they had a labor department down there. They found us jobs. And you go right downstairs in the building on the first floor, an office, whatever, and there's two little white ladies sitting there with Rolodex cards with 10,000 jobs available. That's how many jobs were available because the garment industry was in New York. My familiarity with the job industry was because when I was a senior in high school, they had a system called co-op. And the better students could get a co-op job. A co-op job was where you go to school 1 week and you work the next week. And there was two people on the same job. So when I was in school, my co-op partner, he was working. Then the next week, he would go to school and I would work. I'll tell you about the garment industry growing up in New York. If you've never seen the garment industry, my friends, my people, you ain't seen nothing. So my senior year, I was introduced to the garment industry, even though I knew the industry, but I knew the book part of it. You know the inner works. I get a job that was only 3 blocks from where the school was, because the school is in the garment industry. They call it the Soho now. They didn't call it back then, Soho. But my school was in the garment. I mean, the job was in the garment industry. So I get a job at Max Udell's Gramercy Park Clothing. They made men's suiting. That's what I was in. I'm happy as could be. I thought, understand people, I thought the job description was cutter's assistant cutter. That's what I thought I was going to learn how to do, because I learned how to do the cutting in school. I thought that's what I was going to do. No, I was nothing but a glorified floor boy, moving stuff around this big old factory. They had 4 floors of Gramercy Park Clothing. I start out in the cutting department. My job was to take piece goods, that's 100 yards of fabric, from one table to the next, and all the fabrics were tucked under the tables. So if he was cutting at table 2, in the middle, the tables were 100 yards long. So if he was cutting at table 2, but the piece goods, he gave me a list of piece goods that I had to pull from under the tables and bring them to him. Well, if it was on table 4, I might have to go 50 yards down, across to table 4, 50 yards up, grab the piece good from under the table, and take it all the way back. That's 1 roll. He might have 10 rolls I had to do. That's what I had to do. But there was a gentleman, a Jewish man, named Izzy. Izzy was the chief cutter. But I had already watched the designer make the patterns. Now I'm seeing the spreaders who spread the cloth on the tables. As long as the table was, they spread the whole table with fabric, stack it about 25 to 30 layers high. Use a straight knife to cut 30 pieces or whatever it is at one time. But see, the good thing about it, I learned how to do that in school. We didn't cut 30 high. I learned how to use the machine. That's what I thought I was going to do. Izzy, I got this job, and got this job in the beginning of the school year. So it's cool out. Then as it got warmer, one day, I'm telling you people, my heart, Izzy rolled up the sleeve, because he always wore a long sleeve shirt. Even in the summertime, when it was hot, he had a long sleeve shirt on. He rolled up his sleeve, and I saw something that just took me. He had numbers tattooed on his forearm. He was a Holocaust survivor, and his identification numbers were on his arm. And he said, yes, I was in a concentration camp. I said to myself, wow, here's a guy who I'm in there every day with, who was a survivor from the Holocaust. And never asked him, what was it? You know how people say, well, what was it like, or what did you do? Because that wasn't none of my business. I could imagine what he had went through. So I kind of left it alone. But as long as I worked there, I always praised Izzy as being, he always treated me right, talked to me in a nice manner. He was just a humble man. Now, here's a good one for you all guys. Elevators. You ever been on an elevator which didn't have no door on it? Didn't have no door. Didn't have no elevator operator. Wasn't that crank kind that you use. The factory elevators that were in those factories when I worked there had a steel cable that ran up and a glove. You put the glove on, you yank the cable, car started to move. You want to stop it? You had to grab the cable, give it a little snap, and it would stop. But needless to say, you ain't had no real control of it. It never stopped right on the floor. So you had to trying to get it level, because if you had a cart on the floor, you needed to roll it out. If you would just go, because you had to go upstairs, that's the only way you can get upstairs, was on that elevator. It had a steel cable, and it had a workman's glove. And you put the glove on, and you yank it like that, and all of a sudden the elevator, you go up, or down. Now normally when you go into, today we just push a button. In the early days, they always had an elevator operator that manually took you up near a little crank thing, and he'd take you to whatever floor you want. And sometimes he'd stop and he'd get it to you. But now here, you got to do this by yourself. Now if you were on it, once it goes up the elevator shaft, like I said, there was no door in front of you. When you got to your floor, there was no door there either. You just step off or step on. So I'm working in this factory, Gramercy Park Clothing. So once the cutter cut the garments, then I had to take them to another floor where they assembled them. I'm seeing now the assembly. I'm seeing a factory in work. I'm seeing how they maneuvered and made clothes. But this is my little funky job. I didn't care. I made $1 an hour. I made $40 a week. My paycheck was 31 something. That was a lot of money for a high schooler back then. So now I'm at the floor. I take him to, once he cut them, I had to learn how to bundle them up. So I bundle them up. I load them on the cart. Now I got to take this elevator. So I got to pull the thing to get the elevator to come up. I got to guide this cart full of clothing on it on that elevator. I got to go to the next floor, stop it to be able to get the cart off it. But now I'm in there's 400 people in there. So I'm seeing the garment industry in its entirety. I said, wow. I never knew what went on. Now I see it. Now once they finish the garments, I got to rack them. So now I got to rack them and take them to another floor, the shipping department, to where they ship them out. So I saw how that operation worked. I said, wow, this is amazing. When my school was out and I went to get a job, this is when the second part of prejudice slapped me in the face. School was out. I go down, I have to go far, go down to the employment office in the school, right before school ended, and they give me a job. Go through a little index card, and it said, well, we got a lot of openings at Robert Hall Clothing, which was a big clothing company back then. They had their own stores. They had a factory, and they sold them out of Robert Hall Clothing stores. Well, I said, well, I'm fresh. I never had a real job. I'm going to go take this job. It was in the factory part of it, though. Now, factory was in Brooklyn. Once again, I'm always commuting, mind you. This subway to that subway to a bus, or I got to walk the rest of the distance. So, go to Robert Hall. Now I'm in what I saw at Gramercy Park Clothing. I'm in the manufacturing part. And I'm working, I'm working, learning how to make clothes. Difference is they taught me how to be a tailor, not a piece worker. I worked it, and I had first assignment because I came out of high school knowing how to sew. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. That's what the school prepares you, so you can go to work. They gave me, my first assignment was making coin pockets in a pocket. Men's pants back then, and some still do, they put an extra pocket in the pocket where we don't carry purses, so instead of your change sloshing around in your pocket, you put it right in the pocket. That was my job, people. He showed me what to do. I jumped down on, oh man, I got a pile of pockets, just a pocket, not the rest of the pad, because everything is sectioned off. I got a pile of pockets in front of me. I'm skinning and grinning to myself. Man, this is all right. The lady next to me had a different job. She taped the armhole of coats and she laughing at me. Why are you laughing at me, lady? She's just laughing at me. For 2 weeks she laughed at me. I thought I was doing something because I got these pile of pockets in front of me. The third week, they take me off a minimum wage and they put me on piecework salary. She was laughing at me for 2 weeks. Now I'm on piecework salary. So the first week, I'm making $40 a week, bringing home 31 something. I said, it's all right. The third week, they shift you and they put you on the piecework plan. So I'm still doing the same thing. Get my paycheck that Friday or the next Friday. Get my paycheck. So like I said, $18 and change. I said, wait a minute, hold on, I've been getting $31 and I got $18? I called the foreman, hey man, y'all made a mistake on my check. I said, what's wrong? I said, my check only $18. They said, that's all the work you did. I've been, every day, I got a pile of pockets this high. The lady been laughing at me for 2 weeks. She finally leaned over, she said, son, you got to go faster than what you're doing. But I got this pile of pockets up here like that. How much faster? Oh, I learned how to get fast, all right. Oh, yes, I did. You know why? That first assignment, making those coin pockets, I made 90 cents for every 125 pockets I made. Oh, yes. I worked 8 hours every day. She only worked 6. Her paycheck would be $80 and $90. I could see her. She would take, but she was always laughing at me. She didn't tell me I got to be faster. I had to learn the hard way. I learned the hard way when that paycheck was $18. I'm only working in 3 weeks. Living home with my mom, so it wasn't that bad right away, right? Like, Mom, I said, I want to do this. I didn't learn the industry to be a factory worker. But between my co-op job and working at Robert Hall Clothing, it prepared me for the industry that I've now been in 63 years. Because not only did I get skillful, I got fast. Well, I could make clothes. People can't believe how fast I was making clothes. But I wasn't satisfied. So I went back to my school, because now school had opened up again. So I went back to my school, and I went into the employment office, because it's always open to ex-students. And I said, hey, they started calling out jobs that were available, thousands of jobs, but they were all in a factory. So I went upstairs to my tailoring teacher, who taught me tailoring, Mr. Santa Pedro. And I cornered him. I said, Mr. Santa Pedro, you used to tell me I was one of the best students you ever taught in tailoring. I said, but all I can get is a factory job. I said, why is that? He said, well, I don't have no control over where you can get a job. But I found out the white boys had the jobs, especially the Italian white boys, in the exclusive tailor shops. But you told me I was better than them. Why am, well, it's very simple. I learned this later. Discrimination. I went down to the employment office, and by now they had a sister working in the employment office. Before it was all white girls. And she told me, she said, we put in the corner of your application your sex. They just put a letter up there. Put a C, being colored. So when you came with your paper, they looked at it, looked at you, they geared you to the factory, not the exclusive shops. So I went back up, I called in Mr. Santa Cruz, I said, hey, you told me how good I was. I want one of them good jobs. Huh? I don't handle that. I said, so you gonna find me a job. I didn't raise no stink or nothing. I said, you gonna find me a good job. He said, well, come back next week. I'm gonna see what I can do for you. I went back. He said, we'll send you down to Macy's, R.H. Macy's. He said, talk to my brother. Found out his brother was the head tailor of Macy's. He said, my brother told me a lot about you. He said how good you are. He said, I got a job opening that I can't fill. He said, I can't fill it because it's in White Plains, New York. Now, Harold Square is in Manhattan, downtown. I live in Harlem. White Plains ain't even in the city, it's the suburbs. At that particular time, Macy's only had 4 stores. They had the Harold Square store, they had the one in White Plains, they had one in Brooklyn, and they had one in the Bronx, Parkchester section of the Bronx. They only had 4 stores. The White Plains store had an opening. He said he can't fill it because White Plains, subways run up there. It's really the suburbs. I said, man. I said, I'll take it. I live in Harlem. So I'm due to go down to the Harold Square store for my training in the big tailor shop. This is a small one. He says, there's only 4 guys up there. This one had 40 people working there. I said, okay. So for about 2 months, I did my training down there. Then I'm to go up there to Macy's. So the week I was supposed to go up there, I said, well, let me find out how long it takes me to get up there. It took me 2.5 hours. So I got 2.5 hours to get up there. Got to be working 9 o'clock in the morning. It take me 2.5 hours to get home. That's 5 hours I was commuting. Before I went up there, he told me, he looked me in the eye and he said, look, I ain't gonna like you. I said, why not? He said, because there's 4 Italian tailors up there. He said, we have never had a black one in the tailoring system. So we never had one. So I was the first that they ever hired in Macy's. When I got up there, I met the little shop foreman, and I noticed they put me on the pants division, which was in the real, this was being in the back of the bus type thing. The 4 of them sat up here together collectively. I sat in the back, way in the back. I'm saying, okay, y'all don't want me sitting there. Can I come close? No, you sit back there. I'm still digesting this whole racism thing. They sat, they talked, they ate lunch together. I ate lunch with who? The stock boys in Macy's. No blacks you would see on the selling floor. All the blacks had jobs behind the scenes. Stock boys, clean up people, packers, shippers. That's what all the blacks had. I'm walking around Macy's with a suit and tie on. They started looking at me. Because they had never seen a black, period, in Macy's back then. This is 1962. They had not seen a black face with a suit and tie on. Everybody had a gray jacket on with your name on it. Jim, Sandy, Mary, Joe. So everybody knew who you were. But now all of a sudden, they wondered, who this brother here, this young brother here with a suit and tie on? Because I had to dress up. I worked in the television department. They see me like that. But the 2 years that I worked for them, never had conversation with them, knew their first name, didn't know their last name. Didn't associate with them, didn't eat lunch with them, didn't do a thing with them. The good thing about it was, even though it was that far away, mind you, minimum wage was $1 when I started. $40 automatically, they gave me $68. So I got a $28 jump by just getting that job. Plus they allowed me to work overtime. I'm making $100 now. Because with the overtime pay at my base pay, I'm making $100. Heck, I'm 18 years old. Making $100 in 1962. I'm living large. So I'm working this job, but then I found out I'm making $68. Them tellers making $105. So I asked them, they said, well, you get a raise after 6 months. Well, after 6 months, I went from $68, but I'm getting this overtime, so it looks like but I'm working. I go from $68 to $75. It's like an $8, $9 jump. But I'm doing all this overtime, so now I'm making $125 a week. I'm just 19 years old now. They got a raise too. So they went from 105 to 120. So I said, why ain't y'all give me what I'm doing? And I'm doing more work than they do. But that was the system. So I called downtown one day and I talked to Mr. San Pedro. He told me, he said, Tom is a shop foreman. He said, Tom lets us know if you deserve a raise. I'm out working all of them. And Tom is saying, well, he's always telling me, no, Jim, you ain't put your time in. I said, what time got to do when I'm doing all this work? Well, you see, Henry worked 15 years before he got to us. Come on now. I'm better than Henry. Henry making $1.25. Okay, it's okay. Found out, working in Macy's, that's when I learned how the system was run. That's when I learned how prejudiced these white folks were to blacks. See, I became a threat to them. But because it's the same company, but two different divisions. One store is here, and they got somebody that handles that store. And the main store where the headquarters is down here. They say, but they listen to these folk in the other stores on what happens. Now I know what prejudice, racism, I know what all of that stuff means now. I experienced it with the white boys growing up, but never in the workplace because I had never been in the workplace. So in doing that, that's how things went. And because of that, it made me a better man. It made me a better person. But it made me a bona fide worker. That was my experience with them until I got an offer to work for Barney's in New York. Barney's at that particular time was the biggest men's store in the world. Barney was called Barney. Started out being called Barney's Boys Town. It was like 12 floors of men's clothing. Downtown New York, oh, they were big. They were big. Friend of mine turned me on to the job, so I took a part-time job, and I left Macy's alone from doing the part-time because I got a car now. Now I got me a car. So that 2.5 hour drive, 2.5 hour commute to get to Macy's. I'm still living in Harlem now. Now, it took me 40 minutes just by having a car. So I cut that time out. But now, I would drive home from Macy's, park my car, get on the subway, go downtown, working at Barney's. Well, I asked the foreman at Barney's, I said, if you get an opening of full-time without part-time, I said, if you get an opening, I'd like to have the job. I'm still working at Macy's, but now I'm not doing the extra work for them. Now they get backed up. I wasn't backed up in my department. They get backed up. So they bring an Italian boy in. Now, my salary at Macy's now was up to $85 after about a year and a half. So now they bring a white boy in. They want me to train him because they say, you need help. I ain't need no help. Y'all need help. But they needed somebody to do the part that I was doing. And well, Patrick was his name. You train Patrick so we could, because see, I started helping them somewhat, but they wouldn't give me the money. They brought Patrick in for me to train. Started him with what I was at. They started him with $85. I had to work to get to $85. So Patrick said, well, what do I do? I said, I'm too busy, because that's what they used to tell me. He go up there and talk with them, because I wasn't teaching them squat. So I given Macy's my exit 2 weeks, because I wanted to keep in good standings with Macy's. I don't care about the guys in the tailor shop. Oh, you got to train Patrick. You got to train. I ain't training Patrick. No. I left. I said, bye. You figure it out. Y'all wouldn't help me. Y'all wouldn't pay me what y'all were making, but you worked me. I left and I went to Barney's. Now at Barney's, they started me with $100. At Barney's, I'm still right at 20 years old. Plus, they gave me all overtime I want. I'm making $200 with the extra work.